in the last chapter of the New Testament, Revelation, predict that the human world will be destroyed in a huge disaster. Humanity lives on in a barren wasteland of yellow sand. Description in Revelation. In fact, it is very similar to the apocalyptic style depicted by Wasteland Punk. Different from the well-known, high-technology, low-life, cyberpunk. Wasteland Punk, shrouded in the haze of nuclear war. In the context of the Cold War between the United States and the United States in the last century, people believed that a worldwide nuclear war could break out at any time. This also gave rise to artists' imagination and creation of the future human world. We are not living in a future where technological development is becoming more and more civilized, but living in a wasteland. The game, Fallout, outlines such a sci-fi wasteland world for us. And Wasteland Punk can also have many detailed branches. Fallout is vacuum tube punk in a wasteland world. And another representative of Wasteland Punk, Mad Max, can be subdivided into Diesel Punk. That's right, what we're going to talk about today. It is a famous representative of Wasteland Punk, Mad Max, series. What kind of legend is this 45-year-old Wasteland model IP? In order to seamlessly connect to the soon-to-be-released Mad Max, Fury, also called Furiosa, The Legend of Mad Max, let's review the first 4 movies of Mad Max in one go. At the same time, it will also be interpreted based on the worldview background, comics, etc. Then let's sit tight and hold on tight. The big truck is about to start going crazy. Talking about the Mad Max series. It's the equivalent of tying up the man who created this wasteland world, George Miller. It's safe to say there wouldn't be Mad Max without George Miller. In turn, there is no success like Mad Max. Nor will anyone remember George Miller and Mel Gibson, the man who plays Max. George Miller was born in Chinchilla, Queensland, Australia in 1945. I fell in love with movies after attending a film seminar in college. Like many directors, he first relied on making short films to attract attention. 1971, George Miller's First Steps short film, Violence in Film, Part 1. It aroused heated discussions among many film critics and audiences, and had polarizing comments on the short film's perception. As you can tell from the title, this short film explores violence. This also planted the DNA of blood-expanding violent aesthetics for his future feature films. Although the short film was controversial, it won awards at many film festivals. George Miller finally has his own voice in the Australian film industry. Before George Miller became a director, he was a doctor in Sydney. He is in the hospital emergency room, where he often comes into contact with people who come to him for emergency treatment in car accidents. In short, George Miller was inspired by the car accident, co-written with friend James McCausland. Mad Max script. In 1973, the first worldwide oil crisis began. The cause was when Israel launched the Yom Kippur War. So Arab countries imposed an oil embargo on countries that supported the Yom Kippur War. It has caused developed countries to enter economic recession, including Australia. This also became the inspiration for the background creation of Mad Max. In 1979, George Miller constructed an Australian dystopian action film. The scramble for resources caused by the oil crisis spread across Australia. After the script is decided, it's time to choose the actors. George Miller once wanted to find American actors in Hollywood. This will make the movie as international as possible, able to make a name on a global scale. However, this idea was quickly abandoned due to budget constraints, because buying a plane ticket to fly from Sydney to Los Angeles feels like it's too expensive. What's more, finding a Hollywood actor to film in Australia. So George Miller decided not to look for faces that had appeared on the big screen. High emotional intelligence means not letting the audience have a fixed impression of the actors. Works. Low emotional intelligence means you have no money and cannot afford to hire famous actors. According to statistics, the budget of the first Mad Max was only $350,000 to $400,000 Australian dollars. The maximum equivalent in US dollars is about $260,000 US dollars. So to sum it up, George Miller selected a recent graduate of the National School of Drama in Sydney at the time to play the protagonist Max. He will also be successful in Hollywood in the future. Filmed Braveheart and The Passion of the Christ. Mel Gibson in Apocalypse. Mel Gibson happens to be an American, just as George Miller originally intended. Everything is ready to enter the shooting stage, or is it due to budget issues? So the shooting schedule and props were very tight because there was no money. They didn't even get a filming permit to close the road. Filming can only be done on some temporary road closures. These are reflected in the film. The overall level shown in the first part is indeed quite rough. Next, let's take a look at the first Mad Max. What impact did it have on pop culture on an extremely limited budget? The story time background of Mad Max is placed in the near future. Due to worldwide oil shortages and ecocide, the fight for oil resources is happening everywhere. In some Australian suburbs far away from big cities, it is even more difficult for the government or law enforcement agencies to govern. Chaos is the latter. In those remote places, crime began to become organized and disciplined. Criminal gangs began to form in groups. So the Australian government, based on the police force, derived from the establishment of a temporary team MFP. The full name is Main Force Patrol. This organization walks on the edge of law and free play. Have the freedom to fight violence with violence. Anyway, when dealing with those lawless elements such as speedster gangs and the like, everyone who dies counts. Our protagonist, Max, is a police officer from the MFP. But he has always wanted to convince people with virtue and thought that catching these thugs, it is still necessary to make a ruling through fair and just legal means. One day they met a guy who called himself the Dark Knight. Yes, when translated, it's really called the Dark Knight. The gangster couple killed a policeman, grabbed a police car and went on a rampage on the road. The MFP is dispatched and wants to directly hit. Unfortunately, this MFP chubby guy and his partner are having trouble with the car and playing style. It's still inferior and the Dark Knight can't beat it. My car also hit a van that suddenly appeared, causing the front of the car to deform. After that, I encountered several sudden dodges. Seeing that the Dark Knight is about to escape, Max appears. Let's just do a collision test without any fuss and see who comes first. Then Max kissed the Dark Knight's butt hard. The kiss made the Dark Knight cry, and he immediately stopped when he encountered a ruthless character. Originally, the Dark Knight surrendered, but there was a car accident ahead. The Dark Knight's car didn't dodge quickly and rolled directly into the front, causing the car to crash and killing everyone. This caught Max off guard. But as mentioned before, if such a person dies, he will die. Max went home at night and still lived a happy life. The wife plays music and the children are responsible for being cute. I originally thought this would be the end of it. As a result, a group of motorcycle gangs came to the town the next day to cause trouble. They are here to seek justice for the Dark Knight. At this time, a pair of young people saw a car running away and ran away first as a sign of respect. In the end, he was chased wildly by motorcycle gangs and smashed the car to pieces. After receiving the news, Max and Golden Retriever went to check, but they arrived a step too late. Everyone dispersed, but there was an accomplice from the bikie gang among them. He probably took too many drugs and was left there. Max and the others took him to the police station. But because no one testified and there was insufficient evidence, etc., the boy from the motorcycle gang was acquitted. And the blonde man was so angry that he stepped forward and gave him a good beating. The Golden Retriever must have been retaliated for beating someone. His motorcycle was tampered with by motorcycle gangs. Something unexpected happened while dispatching the police and I ran straight to the fields. But fortunately, the Golden Retriever was not seriously injured, so he just stopped a car and continued driving. As a result, he was ambushed by motorcycle gangs and got into a car accident. He fell and rolled over on his back. Max goes to the hospital to visit the seriously injured Golden Retriever. You can tell the tragic situation of Golden Retrievers from Max's expression. Even Max would be frightened awake at night. After some thought, Max resigned to his boss for the sake of his family and the result was predictable. How could the police let a veteran drive so fast and ruthlessly? So the leader gave Max a holiday. Max took his wife and children on a trip to relax, but in such a chaotic time, everything will definitely not go smoothly. Max's wife encounters a motorcycle gang while buying ice cream. The two fight together and the wife is also a ruthless rival. Just kick the crotch of your pants and the beam is finally settled. Although they escaped, the biker gang was secretly following them. Wife shows up in the jungle with bikie gang. So the bikers chased her and the wife ran away. The bikers chased her and the wife ran away. Fortunately, there was no accident and the wife ran out of the jungle. Max took the guy to check. As a result, the biker gang has gathered at Max's house and caught the child. Fortunately, the old man at home is also a ruthless man and locks up the motorcycle gang at home with a gun. Then he drove away with his wife and children. But the car broke down midway and the motorcycle gang chased after it. Wife holding child on the road. Just like that, he was run over by a motorcycle gang. Max corresponds to the title, he becomes Mad Max. He puts on his own police uniform and drives his own V8, rushing to the battlefield to seek revenge from the motorcycle gangs. At this time, motorcycle gangs were fighting and robbing a gasoline truck on the way. The pole vault method laid the foundation in the first part, and carry it forward later. Max is hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity. Max then got out of the car to check the situation. As a result, he was hit in the leg by an ambushed motorcycle gang, and his arm was also run over by a motorcycle. Max kills the man on the motorcycle and gets on the V8 again to chase the boss of the motorcycle gang. Because the speed is too fast, the boss of the motorcycle gang was hit to pieces by an oncoming truck. Then Max found the biker gang guy who was arrested for the first time. Hold his feet and walk beside the abandoned oil-leaking car on the roadside. Then light the lighter and give him a saw. Max said that if he sawed off his leg in 5 minutes, maybe he can survive, otherwise he and the car will explode together. James Wan said this idea is good. I'm going to make a movie based on this idea, and it's going to be called Saw. However, when Mad Max was released in 1979, James Wan was only 2 years old. But this is no joke, James Wan said in an interview. Saw was inspired by this scene. Back to the video, Max drove away in style in his V8. At this time, Max no longer disdained the law. He himself is law and order in this chaotic world. As for his own emotions, Max, who lost his wife and child, have become careless and lifeless. He became a microcosm of the many lives in the wasteland world. In order to survive, in order to compete for resources, do whatever it takes. Only by falling into madness can we face such a cruel situation. After the release of Mad Max in 1979, word of mouth was polarized. Some countries considered the film too violent and banned it. The violence in the film was too explicit, causing many critics to criticize it at the time. But also because of these violent graphic designs. Let the aesthetics of violence begin to grow in the future. Mad Max's most important influence. In fact, it lies in the creation of a doomsday worldview. Those crazy and abnormal performances and the chaotic wasteland world of doomsday. These will be better portrayed in subsequent sequels. The film also had a huge impact on popular culture. In addition to the aforementioned James Wan, Cameron also said that when filming Terminator, it also paid tribute to Max after he was shot in the leg in the film. A low shot of Max walking towards the cab with a stumbling angle. And then there's the game, Fallout, not to mention. Looking back now, you can clearly see that the film was made on a pitifully small budget. George Miller's various wild action ideas are also shrinking. Many action scenes look very rough and have serious editing marks. First-time feature director George Miller. In his debut film, it can also be seen to the naked eye that regardless of the director's execution ability, still very unfamiliar in terms of scene planning or camera language. The same goes for the script, a very simple and direct story. Not much characterization or plot density. The appeal is actually quite lacking. In fact, to put it bluntly, it's hard for you to imagine. Director of Mad Max 4 and Mad Max 1. It's actually the same person because the quality of the two movies is completely different. But if you watch George Miller's Mad Max 2 and 3 inches, there are also other works he directed such as Happy Feet, etc. You can feel the growth and transformation of George Miller. There is a Mad Max living in his heart. Mad Max 1 as George Miller's first feature film. Today all shooting techniques seem unfamiliar, but in 1979, audiences who have not yet been influenced by the mature special effects industry in movies will still enjoy watching it. Mad Max 1 inch only had a budget of $260,000. Global box office hit $100 million United States dollars. This made the film the most profitable film of all time at the time. With such a terrible rate of return, there shouldn't be a proper sequel. Moreover, the budget for the second part also increased gradually to 4.5 million Australian dollars. The US dollar equivalent is about 3 million US dollars. George Miller is also very efficient in production. The first film was released in 1979. The second part came in 1981. Mel Gibson continued to star. This time I have budget and directing experience. Mad Max 2 inches looks great in every way. More like a serious commercial blockbuster. Both the action scenes and the storyline are more skillful. Mad Max 2 inches story follows the previous one. But it seems like a lot of time has passed. The film begins with a monologue from the memory seeker. We understand that the world at this time is becoming increasingly unstable. The competition for oil resources has become increasingly fierce, and social order has completely collapsed. The government police station, MFP, that it once was no longer exists. Continuous riots have turned the world into chaos, and humans are killing each other. Only the scavengers and those ferocious enough survive. Highway bully groups have set up camps to fight for oil. The wasteland world enters a mature state. As a former MFP, Max has extensive road experience. Of course you can come and go freely in this cruel wasteland world. In order to fill his empty heart, he also brought a dog with him. One dog and one person depend on each other for life. This is also the inspiration for Dogmeat and the protagonist in the game, Fallout. One day, Max and the speedsters were in the car. They're all looking for gas in each other's cars. Max easily overturned one of them. Then quickly ride on the gasoline flowing out of the scrapped car. The other motorcycle fled. This is the daily life of Max Highway. There was a big truck next to the highway, and the driver thought he had been dead for a long time. The music box next to it attracted Max's attention. The melody of the music box is Happy Birthday. Max is reminded of the beauty of a normal life. After that, Max continued to ride on the yellow sand highway. I accidentally discovered a simple helicopter, but upon closer inspection it turned out to be a trap. Suddenly a person emerged from the soil. This person must have read Dune well, learned the reasoning skills of the Freeman. This man is the helicopter pilot. He always uses this method to get people hooked. The pilot threatened Max with a crossbow and handed over the car. Max pretended to give in, and when the pilot approached the car, the dog jumped out of the car. One person and one dog subdued the pilot, but the car was not taken. His own helicopter also became Max's. In order to survive, the pilot said he knew a place. There's as much oil as you want there, I won't lie to anyone. So Max tied up the pilot and took the co-pilot on the road. He also made the dog bite the trigger cord of the gun. And the pilot was disobedient and shot him in the head. Then they went to the place the pilot said. It is indeed a small oil refining place. But Max isn't the only one coveting the place. At this time, the oil refining site was being attacked by the speedsters in front. The speedsters also want to own the refinery. Max couldn't kill so many people by himself, so he tied the pilot to a dead tree. Enjoy mealtime by yourself. Delicious food is a can of dog food. It's not a show of affection, it's real dog food. Max and the dog eat together. The pilot licked up the remaining juice on the edge. When night falls, it seems that the speedsters can't attack and leave. Li Fu is not far away. The next day, 3 vehicles drove out from the oil refinery, but were chased and killed by speedsters. Then a 4th car drove out from the refinery and was also overtaken by the speedsters. Max saw through the binoculars that the man in the car was beaten half to death. Woman killed after being humiliated. Max couldn't stand it anymore. As a police officer, he asked him to go down and save the man. The man thought Max was a nice guy, so he said he would take him back to the refinery. I can give you as much oil as you want. Okay, what you said, so Max carried the man on his back to the refinery. Max was unarmed and entered. Inside was a small society with men, women, old and young. Originally, Max sent the man back to get the gas, and the deal was considered complete. It's so good that this man died just after he entered. There is no proof of his death. The blonde man who is the boss of the oil refinery must not fulfill the dead man's promise to give Max gasoline. Prepare to take Max away. Who knew that the speeding party would attack again and everyone would enter combat mode? The boss of the motorcycle gang is a masked man. Just wear a complete set of props from the SM sex shop. Then suddenly a little kid appeared, killed one of the speedsters with a boomerang. The speedsters suddenly lost their face. The masked man also believed that directly attacking the heavily defended refinery would cause heavy losses. So I listed the conditions for negotiation and gave the people in the refinery a day to think about it. If they give up here in one day, the speedsters will let them leave safely. Sure enough, this life-saving condition started to cause controversy among people in the refinery. Some people think fighting for oil is not worth dying. The most important thing is to leave with your belongings and survive. The eldest blonde man thinks this is a pure trap. You cannot surrender, otherwise life will be worse than death, you can only fight to the end. Max was not idle at this time and threw the music box to the little furry child. Start building rapport with people at the refinery. The time has come and Max has spoken. He said there was a big truck on the road 2 days ago. The driver is dead. This truck can tow the oil tank of the refinery. Max can drive the truck back to the refinery, but only if Max wants to get back the V8 tank they seized and give him a certain amount of gasoline. The blonde man felt that he had nothing to lose in this transaction, so why not give it a try? So I agreed to the plan proposed by Max, and it was just on. They asked Max to go there alone with Diesel and the dog on a pole. Max returned to the place where he detained the pilot. Do you still remember him? But they had already escaped, otherwise they would probably have been exposed to the sun. Max then catches up with the pilot. The pilot was slow because he was dragging the log. So Max turned the pilot's wood into a carrying pole of diesel fuel. They go back to the pilot's helicopter first. They squeezed together and flew to the big truck before. After successfully starting the truck, Max threw the forged key to the pilot, driving a large truck to the refinery. Originally everything went smoothly, but Max was intercepted by a gang of speedsters on the way. Then do it. But Max was still a bit worried because of the overwhelming number of people on the other side. Unexpectedly, the pilot flew the plane for air support at this time and threw the poisonous snake to assist. Finally, Max drove the truck into the refinery. But the battle wasn't over yet. 2 people from the speeder party followed in. People from the speedster gang outside are also eyeing Dandon. Max quickly jumps into battle, using a flamethrower to drive away the bikers. The members of the motorcycle gang inside were also quickly subdued. This was a sudden and unprecedented victory. Everyone in the refinery was excited. Such an impossible task was actually accomplished by Max. Everybody starts to worship Max. However, the truck sustained some damage and it will take 12 hours to repair. But this does not affect Max's becoming a hero. Now Max can't leave even if he wants to. Everyone asked Max to stay. They also pointed out that they actually wanted to go to a better place to live. But none of this appeals to Max. He has experienced so many joys and sorrows before. He doesn't want to be a hero, he thinks it's better to be alone. So I decided to leave. And the pilot decided to stay because I found true love at the refinery. The masked man on the other side was furious. Enzyme brews a bigger attack and fights to the death with the refinery people. The next day Max drove his V8 with the dog, driving on the road again. But not long after driving, we were attacked by a gang of speedsters. To take down the refinery, Max must be killed first. Max's car window was smashed out first, the V8 overturned and he was thrown to the side of the road. Max was injured and reluctantly climbed out of the car and hid behind a rock. However, he was still discovered by the motorcycle gang and they shot the dog to death first. John Wick said, "I know this and you killed my dog." When the speedsters were about to kill Max, the time bomb set by Square Root 8 exploded and Max escaped, but one fell into confusion. The pilot at the refinery saw smoke coming from the distance and knew something had happened to Max. Go to the rescue quickly. When Max wakes up he finds himself on the pilot's helicopter. Back at the refinery, Max has changed his mind. He should take the driver's seat of the big truck. So everyone got ready to go. Max took the lead in driving a large truck filled with oil. After rushing out of the oil refinery, the speedsters have been waiting for a long time. But it could not withstand the direct impact of the large truck and a lot of troops were lost. The pilot also dropped incendiary bombs from the sky. The big truck lured away the speedsters. Other residents of the refinery then drove up, leave in the other direction and blow up the refinery. Max's side fights against the modified equipment vehicles of many speeding gangs. Apparently outnumbered, the door and rear of the large truck were torn off. Although there were 2 people from the refinery on the truck, they were quickly defeated. Max could only drive and shoot by himself, and the blonde man drove over to help. But in the end, he died tragically under the trident of the masked man. The pilot dropped a lot of incendiary bombs. But he was still shot down by the anti-aircraft guns on the ground from the speeders. Max can only suddenly make a U-turn and give the opponent a hunter. Afterwards, the masked man turned on the nitrogen and wanted to do a collision test. I didn't expect that there was a red-haired man of my own at the front of the truck. There was a direct collision and he died tragically. This action design double boss, both of them died in battle, I also disliked it. Max's large truck also flipped over. It turned out that what leaked out was not oil but sand, which was a good move. The remaining members of the biker party saw that the boss was dead and the oil did not turn into sand. So I left disappointed. They must not know that the sand of Arrakis is full of spices. No. At this time, the pilot drove his helicopter over from the ground. Pick up Max. The real oil is in the cars of residents of the refinery. Then the pilot became the new boss of the refinery people. Their convoy continued on their way to the oasis in their minds. Later, the little boy became the leader of these people. Remembrance or narration at the beginning and end. In fact, it is the past that the little furry child recalls when he grows old. The reminiscer went on to say that since that farewell, that was the last time he saw Max. The reputation and impact of Mad Max 2 inches. In fact, it is the most important among the ancient trilogy. I believe many people can also feel it. The narrative structure and plot line of Mad Max 2 inches. Somewhat similar to Mad Max 4 inches. For example, the road madness that unfolds mainly with large trucks. There are also residents who long for oases in the distance, etc. And the action choreography and design of cars driving and dueling on the road. It is also from the second part that we have the most comprehensive process structure. And it will be carried forward in the subsequent Mad Max 3 and 4 inches. More importantly, the drama of fighting while driving influenced and inspired many subsequent movies, such as the Fast and Furious series. In addition, Max's appearance in this part, it also directly inspired the character styling of Fist of the North Star. Some story inspirations from Akira Toriyama's short story collection, Akira Toriyama o Zusaku Theater. Also from Mad Max 2. Mad Max 2 inches also won many awards. Named by Empire magazine in 1999, one of the 500 greatest movies of all time. 2013 updated as one of the 100 greatest movies. The most intuitive thing is the box office, which earned $36 million US. It's also a very good result. Then the third part will be put on the schedule soon. 1985's Mad Max 3 inches. The budget was raised directly to $10 million United States dollars. It was considered a first-line blockbuster at the time, 1984's Terminator. The budget is only $6.4 million. The time background of Mad Max 3 inches has been pushed back several years. The wasteland world has entered a complete state in Australia. Each local force has occupied different resources to form tribes and organizations. Have its own armed forces. The film was shot from the air when it first came out, but it's different once you have a budget. When the camera zooms in, we saw a camel team pulling a broken down car and moving forward slowly. This person is Max. And suddenly a plane flew over his head. The pilot on the plane attacks Max, stealing his camel team, EH. Question mark. Isn't this the pilot of the second part? Why do the two pretend not to know Yazzie? Well, the third part is to give the actors of the pilot a chance to star. This pilot is not that pilot. It's just that they don't know each other anyway. The pilot took away Max's supplies and left. But little did he know that there was also Max's good friend Monkey in the car. The smart monkey keeps throwing supplies out on the road. Leave a signal object for Max to follow. Max took his time and picked up the objects, including food. So I followed slowly. In the wasteland world, you rob me and I rob you. This has happened to Max countless times. It's numb. Max wandered around and went to a place called Butte Town. Max may be able to find his own camel cart and objects there. The creation of the Butte Town scene also started the Mad Max series, a more complete world view of the wasteland. In subsequent comics and sequels, such a place was portrayed more abundantly. In Butte Town, survival of the fittest is very important. If you have supplies, you will be the best. Max came directly and asked without saying anything. The bald men who trade don't bother to pay attention to him. Max pointed out that he had expertise and wanted to enter Bart Town, but was still rejected. In anger, Max grabbed his bald head, and everyone started to steal it. One of the warriors danced with a spear and a stick there, and the result. Max has definitely seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. It is true that this scene is a tribute to the 1981 Raiders of the Lost Ark. The bald man looked at Max for a moment. So I decided to give him 24 hours to enter Butte Town to find someone. But all weapons need to be collected. As soon as Max entered the Butte Town square, he saw his camel caravan. It doesn't even take 24 hours, I found it now. But this camel team no longer belongs to Max, it is an auction item. The pilot has sold all Max's things. Then Max was taken to the tower. The boss of Butte Town lives up there. A tough woman named Big, who founded Butte Town. In this apocalyptic world where resources are scarce, you still need to have your own taste in music. There is a saxophone player next to you. Music was further promoted in the subsequent Max 4 Inches. In order to test Max's strength, Da found someone to compete with Max. In the end, they were no match for Max. Dana admired Max very much. So Da and Max negotiated terms if Max successfully completes the task. You can get a generous reward, which is much better than a camel caravan. Then Dana peered through the periscope into the underground of Butte Town. The underground world is full of pigs, which can be used as food. The most important pig manure can provide biogas to power Butte Town. The underground world is not ruled by a big one, but by a pair of people. The big guy is responsible for force, but the mind is simple and the limbs are strong. The dwarf riding on the big guy is the best, he has a superior IQ. The patent for using pig manure to generate electricity was made by Rue. And only Rue knows how to operate this patent. The big plan is to give Max the best equipment. Let Max take out the big guy, but the dwarfs must be left to continue to operate and generate electricity. But they have no control over the underground world. It will be in the big hands then. In order to get into the underground world, Max must first become a shit shovel. The job of shoveling pig manure is always in short supply. At this time Max discovered that his car had been sold to Rue. There is a bomb in his car and only he can defuse it. Bao Rue threatens Max to quickly unload the bomb. Max took the opportunity to get into the car and turn on the alarm. The harsh sound was unbearable for the big man. So far, Max has successfully provoked the big man and the dwarf. According to the rules of Bart Town, they need to fight to the death in the iron cage. Max just needs to kill the big guy. You can take control of Butte Town again. So, Max and the big guy entered the cage ring and fought back and forth for several times. The big guy is indeed very strong. It is difficult for Max to defeat his opponent and he can only outwit him. The big guy screamed, Max blew the whistle. Max then took the opportunity to smash the big guy's helmet off with a big hammer. But what people never expected is that there is a baby face under the mask. This guy must not be 8 years old. It turns out that the big guy is a mentally retarded person with the mind of a child. At this time, the dwarf also came in and begged for mercy, asking Max not to kill the big man. Max still has a radiant humanity. He didn't want to deal with a big guy who still had the mind of a child. Dana up there doesn't really think so. If you want to survive in the wasteland world, you must do whatever it takes. Dana's men shot the big guy with hidden arrows. At this time Max wanted to leave, but according to the rules of Butte Town, Max must kill the big guy with his own hands. If he didn't do it, he broke the rules and must be judged by the big carousel. The so-called big carousel means that whatever punishment is turned to must be enforced. Everything is up to God to decide whether Max lives or dies. The best thing is acquittal, the worst thing is of course immediate execution. In the end, Max's punishment was to wear a hood and ride on a horse. Exiled to the desert, life or death depends on fate. The big guy got rid of the big guy here, and the dwarf can only obey the orders. Do your job well in generating electricity. Max's best friend. At this time, Max's monkey was quietly released, and the monkey took water to find its owner. It happened that Max's horse died and encountered quicksand, but fortunately the monkey arrived. But this is a desert after all. If you escape one disaster, there will be another. Max later fainted in the desert due to lack of water. Fortunately, Max has the aura of a protagonist. He was saved by a little girl, and brought Max back to the tribe composed of children and teenagers. That place can be called a paradise with a large water source. After Max wakes up, these kids thought Max was their savior, Captain Walker. It turns out that these children live here because when the nuclear explosion day comes, Captain Walker took a group of people on a plane, away from the city and coming to an isolated place. But unfortunately there was a plane crash and those who survived came to this paradise. There is a legend among them that Captain Walker will come back to pick them up one day. And Max's outfit, none and Captain Walker on the slide. There is indeed some similarity. But after all, Max is not Walker and he can't leave with the children. As a result, differences arose among the children. The girl who rescued Max. I think that Max's ability to get here means they can also get out. And she wants to persuade everyone to leave here with her and go to a wider world. Max knew that the outside world was more dangerous. So he tried to stop it and knock the girl unconscious. But the next day the girl left with some people. Max could only take 2 people to catch up and get the girl and the others back. Fortunately, Max went to find it. At this time, the children who left encountered quicksand and were rescued by Max. At night, the entire wasteland world turns blue. This blues gets a more symbolic and amplified expression in Max 4 inches. At this time there are bright lights in the distance, and the children are very yearning for them. I think that's the civilized world. Max said that was the bar town he just escaped from. But Max thought again and decided to go back to the dwarf to rescue him. Then take him to Xanadu and let the dwarf and the child be together. Build a paradise into a civilized place. They did what they said, sneaking into the underground of Butte Town. After a secret fight, Max and the others successfully grabbed the dwarf and started the locomotive to escape. Taking away Butte Town's exclusive energy pattern would be fine. A large number of troops were dispatched to pursue them, and a decisive battle on the Poor Lois began. With the efforts of everyone, Max won the first wave of attacks. The train also reached the end and was stopped. At this time, the pilot's son unexpectedly appeared, and Max and the others followed his route. When they got down to the pilot's underground suite, Max was too lazy to settle old scores with the pilot. But the pilot is asked to take off the plane immediately. Take the kids and get out of here to avoid the attack. But the plane carried too many people and was overweight, and the runway was too short and reached a cliff. The plane can only take off back toward the larger troops. Max finally decided to sacrifice himself. Driving a car ahead to cover the plane, Max was at the critical moment. He collided with a large convoy and was injured himself. The plane finally took off. Dakin looked at Max at this time. I just said that we are all in the same boat. Then he left with a smile and let Max go. Dana is a good thief. On the plane, the children saw that the once civilized world had become a wasteland. It turns out that the paradise they live in is the best place. Many years later, there were lights where the children lived. More people settled there. The little girl told the residents about the past. About the hero Max. The story structure of the third part. Personally, I think it borrowed a bit from the popular Raiders of the Lost Ark series at the time. The plot has twists and turns, and a B story only appears in the middle of the film. Then B goes first and the story progresses to a certain extent. Combined with the previous A-line story, let's have another decisive battle. Compared with the first 2 parts, the third part adds more humorous scenes. There are also a lot of light-hearted moments, and the level of violence is also greatly reduced. Not as serious and depressing as the previous 2 films. After all, as this series becomes more and more popular around the world, it is inevitable that more commercial factors will be taken into consideration in production. Be shown as widely as possible around the world. The protagonist Max seems to be gradually adapting to the rules of the wasteland world. Keep your own rules as a human being under these rules. And return to the original intention of the first film, the kindness of human nature. Help more people. The third film was released at the time and grossed $36 million at the box office. Frankly speaking, due to the increase in budget, such box office results are not impressive. However, the reputation was pretty good. In 1987, 2 years after the third film was released, the fourth part is already brewing, but the development and production of the fourth part. But he went through an unimaginable journey. As for what happened, we come to the explanation of the fourth part, Mad Max 4, Fury Road. Since George Miller began to have ideas for Mad Max 4 inches in 1987, this idea slowly brewed for 10 years until 1998. George Miller finally decided on the story direction of the fourth film. Times have changed. No, the oil crisis is no longer so important. So the fourth part can't just talk about the fight for oil. But there are other resources to compete for, including people themselves. Then George Miller started doing storyboards. I basically storyboarded the entire movie. This is a movie with very little dialogue and visual effects first. And designed many new characters and new cars. This has been going on for more than 2 years, and we have entered the year 2000 of the new century. At this time, the protagonist of the fourth film is still played by Mel Gibson as Max. The heroine negotiated with Sigourney Weaver, who was very popular at the time. Just when everything was ready, September 11, 2001, the United States suffered the worst terrorist attack in history, and the Twin Towers were destroyed. This resulted in a collapse of the US dollar against the Australian dollar. The budget for the previous Mad Max 4 inches directly increased and it was terrible. In desperation, the project was shelved indefinitely. At this time, George Miller has to work and earn an income. So he directed and produced Happy Feet, which was released in 2007 and received a very good response. It also won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature Film the following year. So in 2011 there was Happy Feet 2 inches. During this process, the Mad Max 4 inches project is also moving forward slowly. The first is Mel Gibson's exit. Since his appearance in the Mad Max series, entering Hollywood to show off his talents, Braveheart was directed and starred in. Then, The Passion of the Christ, directed by Mel Gibson in 2004 was released. Caused an uproar. Mel Gibson was criticized for being anti-Semitic and fell into a vortex of controversy. At this time, both George Miller and Mel Gibson felt that Max in the Mad Max series shouldn't be an old soldier. Too old, so Mel Gibson no longer plays the role of Max. I personally think it has something to do with the controversy Mel Gibson was facing at the time. Time has come to 2010 again. Finally, Mad Max 4 inches has entered the preparatory stage. The starring role has been decided to be played by Mr. Tang as Max and Emperor Sai as the new heroine. In July of the same year, George Miller announced, Mad Max, Fury Road will be filmed back-to-back. And Mad Max, Fury Road. Here is a special explanation for Rage Road. The word is Furiosa. That is the pronunciation of Furiosa, the heroine played by the Emperor of Serbia. So I don't know if it was already done at that time. 2024's Mad Max, Fury given. Anyway, 2011, 26 years of enzyme brewing. Mad Max 4 inches finally starts filming. In fact, some of the cars in the film were already produced as early as 2003. After more than 10 years of restarting, these cars are still usable, entering a new era of special effects in the film industry. In addition, Warner generously gave a budget of $150 to $180 million US. Let George Miller bring his violent imagination to that wasteland. Played to the extreme in Mad Max 4 inches. Next, we will combine related comics. Go to the Mad Max, Fury Road movie, and comprehensive analysis beyond the video. Mad Max 4 inches. The pattern of the wasteland world expands again. The unfolding of the fourth new story. It is inseparable from the setting of the Iron Triangle alliance of the three wasteland towns. Let's first take a look at what the video didn't expand on. Immortal Joe in the background of these fortresses. Immortal Old Chow turned out to be a young, handsome and a muscular former Australian Army general. He also participated in the oil war, but when he retired and returned to his hometown, but found that Australia is already in a state of anarchy. So Lao Chow brought former soldiers and formed a motorcycle gang. In the motorcycle gang, he has the best relationship with Lao Chow and is the most trusted subordinate. There is a man named Major Karanikov. He later became the farmer of Bullet Farm. At that time, it was very important to join a group to keep warm and protect yourself. Lao Chow and other motorcycle gangs have all served as soldiers, so they are very capable in combat. At that time, Lao Chow still had principles in doing things. For example, don't kill women and children, be kind to civilians. But as the situation became chaotic, various violent organizations sprang up in Australia. Each one is more hateful than the other. Lao Chow's motorcycle gang organization can't be a charity. In order to survive, he became more and more violent. During a trip, Lao Chow's people met the former MFP. That is, the looters formed by Max's former MFP police station, robbing civilians. I didn't expect that MFP would end up in this situation in order to survive and snatch resources. After a fierce battle, Lao Chow's motorcycle gang drove away the looters. But Lao Chow's people are not good birds either, and they have also begun to attack civilians. He even raped women among civilians. In this way, Chow's team also fell into war. There is no difference between other violent organizations in the wasteland world. They plundered all the resources of this wave of civilians. Among the civilians, a banker had his nose cut off. This man was Brody. He is the future mayor of Gasoline Town, the cannibal. Brody mentioned a treasure land he passed by, which was surrounded by mountains on three sides and was easy to defend. The key is that there is a groundwater basin below and an inexhaustible source of water. Yes, in this wasteland world, water is very important to ordinary people. More precious and a resource that needs to be snatched. So Lao Chow decided to lead his troops to capture the fortress. However, the fortress was also heavily guarded at this time. There have been many organizations that have tried to attack but all ended in failure. Seeing that Lao Chow couldn't do it by force, he thought of outsmarting him. After a few days of rest and planning, Lao Chow first used heavy weapons to storm the main tower of the fortress. He led his elite men to climb up from behind and stab the opponent in the back. After 2 days and 2 nights of fierce fighting, Lao Chow finally captured the fortress. From then on, Lao Chow was called Immortal Lao Chow. After Immortal Old Joe captured the fortress, he knew that only one city-state could not exist for a long time. People and materials need to flow to revitalize the entire area. This can also prevent others from being unable to retreat when they come to attack. So Immortal Joe sent his adjutant, Major Kolonikov, sent to the lead mine they occupied not far away. Weapons and bullets can be produced there, and it later became a bullet farm. Provide weapons for the fortress. 2 years after the bullet farm was established, they found an oil refinery not far away. Then send Brody over and start refining the oil. And this refinery, actually it's the one in Mad Max 2. The oil refinery that was bombed but not completely destroyed. It later became Gasoline Town, and Brody became the mayor of Gasoline Town. These 3 places are closely connected and feed each other. It has become the 3 fortresses that are difficult for others to contend with. And Immortal Old Chow in the largest fortress. I have already forgotten all my previous principles of life. He later contracted radiation sickness and his body was covered in pimples and became very weak. So I put on a pair of fake muscle armor. Then pin on it the various honor medals that you have served in the army and looted. Immortal Old Joe is also very different from the residents of the fortress. He believed that people are more likely to obey in times of difficulty. So he who controlled the water source. Only a small amount of water is given to residents every day. Let the people in the fortress live in dire straits and be unable to resist. In order to plunder more resources from other places, combat effectiveness needs to be continuously updated. So Immortal Old Chow began to give himself more mythological color. The younger generation who have been brainwashed by Old Chow worship Immortal Old Chow very much. They call them War Boys. War Boy thinks that fighting for Immortal Joe is the most glorious mission. Taking sacrifice in battle as the most glorious moment in life. War Boy believes in this way to die. Immortal Old Age will raise their souls to the Hall of Valor. So every time there is a mission in battle, the War Boys rush to participate. In order to improve their combat effectiveness, they will die at the most critical moment in the battle, snorting a lead compound spray. Made in Bullet Farm. This kind of lead spray can make people very excited after being sprayed in battle. But it is very harmful to the body. Long-term smoking can cause lung cancer and lymphoma. So War Boy needs healthy blood transfusions from time to maintain the balance of his body. Want to get healthy and strong blood? This means sometimes you have to look for fresh body ingredients in the wasteland world. That brings us to the opening scene of Mad Max 4. At this time, Max is still working as a lone ranger, driving a V8 alone in this wilderness. But occasionally I still think of some unbearable past events. However, the cruel world does not allow Max to have too much time to be sentimental. The city management is coming, run quickly. No, it's because Max broke into Immortal Joe's territory. Discovered by War Boys on patrol. If you don't run away, you will be captured and become Immortal Joe's private property. But the War Boys have more people, more vehicles, and better equipment. Max was quickly captured and brought back to the fortress, where Max's head was shaved. The instruction manual is tattooed on the back like a product. Typo Universal Blood, high quality. It turns out that Max was used as a living blood transfusion bag for the War Boys to replenish blood. Just when Max was about to be stamped with the logo of Immortal Joe and prepare for factory settings, Max broke free instantly. So, here we come. Max will run and War Boy will chase. During Max's escape, we can see that the fortress is not short of water. And Max has always been haunted by the shadow of a little girl. The little girl seemed to be blaming Max for leaving her behind. This is not Max's daughter, who has been through so much. Max's memories of the normal world and his former family life has become blurry. This little girl is mentioned in the comics. He is Max's experience before breaking into Immortal Joe's territory. This experience is actually a story between the 3rd and 4th parts. I don't know if it will be made into a movie in the future. At the beginning of part 4 we can see Max's V8 returning to him. But in the 3rd part, always in Butte Town. In fact, it was Max who later returned to Butte Town and retrieved the V8 tank. However, the V8 tank was seriously damaged in the battle and he needed to get engine parts to repair it. So Max went to Gasoline Town and wanted to repair his car. As a result, Max got involved in a scuffle with the Vulture gang. Max was hit hard and almost died. Fortunately, Max was rescued by a woman. The woman hates the Vultures because they kidnapped her daughter Glory. As a thank you, Max agreed to rescue Glory. So Max sneaked into the underground city, the home of the Vulture gang. Embarked on a thrilling adventure and successfully fished out Glory. Afterwards, the mother and daughter wanted to follow Max and travel around the world. But Max was used to being alone and refused. Just as Max drives off in the V8. But he saw in the rearview mirror that the Vulture gang's car suddenly appeared and killed the mother and daughter. This became a lingering shadow in Max's heart. Just like Max went through the pain of losing his wife and child. Back to the video, Max ran to the edge of the mountain, only to find it was a cliff. He jumped up and grabbed the hook to escape. Reluctantly, he was captured by the War Boys. Of course, what awaits Max is the fate of the blood transfusion kit. On the other side, Furiosa, played by the Emperor of Cypriots, appears. There is already Immortal Joe's acid logo on the back of her neck. Furiosa is the commander of Immortal Joe's convoy on a mission. This shows how much Immortal Old Chow trusts and values her. Of course, you can also feel that Furiosa's strength is not to be underestimated. Light from her bald androgynous look, and you can feel your aura by smearing engine oil on your forehead. In fact, George Miller originally made Furiosa have long hair. However, the Emperor felt that this did not highlight the character's character enough. So I discussed it with the director before shooting. She can shave the characters' heads. This decision directly sublimates Furiosa's aura. Immortal Old Joe also appeared. He suffered from radiation sickness. I had to wear a breathing mask with teeth and claws, but it was really cool. He has 2 sons. The eldest son, Dwarf, has been bedridden and unable to walk. But my brain is very bright. The second son is tall and strong but has little brains. These brothers are actually George Miller. Self-tribute to the big man and dwarf combination in part 2. After an impassioned speech, Immortal Old Joe opened the floodgates. Let the weather-beaten people below have some water to drink, but only for a while. Furiosa's convoy sets off. Bring back gasoline and weapons from the land of Gasoline Town and Bullet Farm. But shortly after setting off, Furiosa suddenly changed direction. Driving towards the enemy's territory, Immortal Old Chow felt bad when he found out. He immediately ran to his safe harem to check, and it turned out to be exactly what he thought. All the beautiful wives he hid have been taken away by Furiosa. The midwife inside told Immortal Old Joe that it was not Furiosa who took him away. Instead, these women begged Furiosa to take them away from here. These women are the breeding mothers of Immortal Old Chow, who reproduce his offspring. Immortal Joe has a morbid obsession with continuing the family line. He hopes that he will have many children and grandchildren. He always wanted a woman to give him healthy offspring. In order to achieve this goal, Immortal Old Chow spent a lot of money in various places. Get these women and put them in medieval chastity belts, in case other men covet. In addition, in order to allow the offspring to drink more abundant breast milk, there is also a dedicated team of nannies. Of course, they themselves will drink from time to time. So what is the proudest thing about Immortal Old Chow? Why did Commander Furiosa betray him? This will extend the background story in the comics of Furiosa. Furiosa didn't follow Immortal Joe all the way, she did it when she was very young. Kidnapped from a place called the Oasis. In the comics, Furiosa wants to prevent herself from becoming a plaything. Dress yourself up like a boy. Volunteered to become a war boy, and then relied on her own bravery to fight. Gradually, he gained the favor of Immortal Old Chow and became the commander of missions. Originally, Furiosa had no sympathy for Immortal Joe's seed mothers. Until one of the women got pregnant. She is willing to strangle the child in her belly to death with a wire. Nor is he willing to let his child become Immortal Joe's warlord. Only then did Furiosa realize. These girls are actually like the pain they once endured. He felt sympathy for them and decided to help them escape. She herself also made up her mind to leave here and go to her hometown Oasis with them. Back to the movie, Furiosa's men realize they are traveling in the wrong direction. But there was no doubt. But when I saw smoke bombs emitting from the convoy of the fortress in the distance. Be alert again. This smoke bomb requires additional support from Bullet Farm and Gasoline Town. Furiosa continued to play dumb, but she knew it wouldn't be long before she was exposed. So I decided to change the route slightly and enter the territory of the Vulture Gang. Sure enough, the Vulture Gang drove out a car full of thorns to intercept. And a fierce battle started between the two sides. This is actually a bet. In order to get rid of the warboy around him, Furiosa. Let them confront the Vulture Gang, but if something goes wrong, I will explain it here. The Vulture Gang used modified hedgehog trucks, cutting machines, forklifts, etc. Basically, they were all captured by Furiosa. At this time, Immortal Old Chow's team also arrived. Furiosa faces greater obstacles. Immortal Joe's team can be called the most luxurious lineup in the Wasteland world. It's really ironic that there is a war drum and a rock guitarist's car to cheer up. The guitarist in red is holding his modified fire-breathing electric guitar. Definitely the most eye-catching presence in the team. The mother of the guitarist in red is also a musician. But he was brutally killed by looters. The guitarist wanted to commemorate his mother. Tear off your mother's face and put it on your own head. Immortal Joe's chariot is also very cool. It was assembled from two 1959 Cadillac coupes. Awesomeness. Not only the appearance of the car exploded, the car also has two intentionally exposed V8 engines providing power. The rear body is also raised and tires are installed to make the car suitable for various terrains. No doubt, this is a real car and can be driven. In fact, the car in Mad Max 4 inches. They are all cars that can really be driven and competed with. Because George Miller used real shots. Of course, the most eye-catching and famous presence in the film. It has to be the war truck that Furiosa drives in the comics. Every add-on to this car has an origin story. Simply put, it's this war truck. It uses a Tatora T-815 military supply vehicle as a powerful chassis. Then we pulled a tanker truck modified with a mezzanine. It is precisely because of the mezzanine that the girls can be hidden. Then the oil tank is put on the head and tail, and the shells of the two models are welded on. Used for people to use weapons and cover from above. The driving area is also assembled using two models. And the front of the car is a twin V8 engine, one behind the other. There is also a shovel on the grill in front of the car for producing sand. In Immortan Joe's convoy, there is a warboy named Knuckles. He admired Immortal Old Chow so much that Immortal Old Chow glanced at him inadvertently. Everyone feels that God is taking care of them. Knuckles will definitely participate in such a glorious battle. But that day he happened to be getting his blood back. Knuckles' health pack is Max. So Max could only be cast in front of the car. Knuckles charged into the battle while replenishing his health. In order to capture Furiosa alive, they first help eliminate the Vulture Gang. Then the two sides were preparing to start a confrontation. Unexpectedly, an epic sandstorm came ahead. Most people stay away. There is no turning back for Furiosa, he can only move forward bravely. Several cars followed him desperately. One of them was directly lifted into the sky by the storm. The scene was truly magnificent. Knuckles also went straight to high and put gasoline in the car. Then he poured a silver lead compound into his mouth and rushed to the Hall of Valor. He also wants Max, a blood bag, to bear witness to him. Max says thank you. At the critical moment, Max grabbed Knuckles' lighting stick. The explosion was prevented, but the car was also smashed to pieces. The storm stopped, but Max was not dead. He tried hard to grab the chains and untie Knuckles, but he had no tools at hand. Max can only pick up the unconscious Knuckles and move forward. I found Furiosa's car parked not far ahead. At this time, several clean women in white clothes were washing their bodies with scarce water. When Max saw that, he was greedy. It wasn't his body but water that made him greedy. He threatened with a gun and took a swig of water from a water pipe. Later, he asked for help to get pliers to cut off the chain. And don't ask for Furiosa's help, just pick out women who don't eat the fireworks of this world. But the woman is still too weak to cut it off. At this time, Furiosa said that Max was careless and did not dodge. The two of them beat each other up, and Knuckles woke up and joined the fight. The women did not stand idly by and stopped Knuckles. But in the end, Max and the others gained the upper hand. Knuckles thought that Max was with him and was planning to take credit and reward together. It just so happened that Immortal Old Chow's pursuers arrived soon after. But Max untied the chains and kicked Knuckles away. He didn't care about the women's life or death, he just got in the car and left. Furiosa is quite calm, because she discovered that Max was not on the side of Immortal Joe. And he also kept a hand. Sure enough, the car automatically shut off after Max drove less than 100 meters. Because Furiosa has set the step switch for normal startup. Only she knows the correct steps to start. After some talk from Furiosa, Max was persuaded. Get Furiosa in the car with the women. In order to survive, a group of people continued to go to the oasis. Max is still worried. In the passenger seat, I searched all kinds of weapons hidden in Furiosa. There are quite a few. At this time, the troops from Bullet Farm and Gasoline Town were outflanking and rushing over. There is also the convoy of Immortal Old Joe behind, attacking from three sides. What's even more unlucky is that the tanker truck is slowing down and a part behind it is malfunctioning. It turns out that Knuckles got into the car quietly from the front and was wreaking havoc behind to try to stop the car. Furiosa wanted to check it out, but Max volunteered to go there on his own. It's an act of kindness. Furiosa has a little more trust in Max. Max repaired the device at the back, but Knuckles sneaked into the cab. Wanting to capture Furiosa directly is naive. Soon Knuckles was controlled, and the women knew that Knuckles was just a child. He also has severe radiation sickness. He was severely brainwashed by Immortal Old Joe. The crime is not worthy of death, so I threw him out of the car. Furiosa's plan this time is to reach the valley. Entering a new territory of a motorcycle gang, Furiosa had a deal with them before. Send them 3,000 gallons of gas and let Furiosa pass. But in such a deceitful wasteland world, the spirit of contract is obviously unlikely to exist. Furiosa told Max to activate the program in case there was a scam. Max drives away directly. At this time, the trust between the two deepened further. Sure enough, the speedsters discovered that there were 3 convoys chasing Furiosa. It felt like she was hiding something. It happened that the pregnant woman was having labor pains at this time. Some noise was made and things were revealed. After receiving the order, Max started the car and drove away. The speedsters pressed the bomb and blew up the stone arch to stop Immortal Joe's motorcade. They're going to go straight to the truck and grab the gasoline. As the name suggests, this group of speedsters performed acrobatic speeds directly in the canyon. In fact, they are indeed acrobatic speedsters invited by the main creator. The moment the motorcycle flew up, they threw bombs at the front of the car, and the car caught fire. Furiosa lets the truck shovel sand to put out the fire. This is how the shovel is used. In the melee, the spherical oil tanker dragged at the end of the war truck was blown up. The speedsters stopped chasing them. Since the way to the Immortal Old Chow was blocked by a boulder, he had to clear it first. Immortal Joe can only use a car that can pass through boulders to pursue him. At this time, Knuckles volunteered to follow him. Immortal Joe soon caught up, wanted to shoot Furiosa directly. As a result, the pregnant woman opened the car door as a shield. Everything is for the sake of the children. Immortal Joe took back his gun. Under the stalemate, Knuckles once again showed his kindness. He said he could step over to the truck and complete the assassination. Immortal Joe gave Knuckles high hopes and promised him a good seat in the Hall of Valor. So Knuckles managed to get on the truck. As a result, he was chained down before taking 2 steps and the mission failed. Immortal Old Chow is a disappointment. Don't even go to the Hall of Valor. Just stay here. After that, Immortal Old Chow's eldest son got on and directly hooked the steering wheel. The pregnant woman quickly got out of the car and used a wrench to cut the chain. But the steering wheel fell out. Suddenly, the car passed by a protruding boulder and it was difficult to turn without a steering wheel. Fortunately, the pregnant woman escaped without being hit. Even Immortal Old Chow was so scared that he broke into sweat. But the danger is not over yet, just as the pregnant woman returned to the car. As soon as my foot slid, the door came loose and I fell out of the car. Immortal Old Chow behind him quickly turned the steering wheel. Everything seemed to be too late. Pregnant woman's tragedy causes other girls to start to panic. Some people even want to return to Immortal Old Jonah, but he endured it after being persuaded by other women. Knuckles has been hiding quietly in the car and his series of failed actions. Immortal Old Chow has lost confidence in him and the Hall of Valor will no longer open for him. However, the red-haired beauty patiently enlightened Knuckles. Let Knuckles feel the true warmth and love like never before. So Knuckles turned to Furiosa's camp. As night falls, the warm orange tones of the wasteland instantly turn into cold blues. It has a similar tone to the third film Daytime Noir. But the fourth part plays a more pure blue, echoing the contrasting colors of orange and yellow during the day. Entering the swamp, the war truck got stuck in the mud and couldn't be pulled out. Knuckles took the initiative to help and finally pulled it out. The engine is overheated again and can only be cooled down slowly. The owner of the bullet farm shot him not far away. Blocking masters Furiosa and Max work closely together. Only the last remaining bullet was used to kill the bullet farmer's tank headlight. By the way, he also blinded his eyes. But the enemy behind is still advancing. Max to cover and buy them time. He took a bucket and disappeared into the night. So that if they start the car, they can just drive away. After a while, I heard only a muffled sound and light in the night. A figure came back, it was Max. He completed the interception and brought back the enemy's exploded equipment. By this time, the car had almost recovered and everyone was back on the road again. Then they passed through a strange acid swamp. Everyone living there looks at the high hooves. They were originally people who lived off the ocean, but now the ocean has turned into a sour ocean. They can only continue to live here. Fishing with high hooves is their skill. Maybe they step on high hooves here and feel that they still have a sense of survival. Immortal Old Chow sighed, although the pregnant woman was not crushed. But after a heavy fall, I breathed a sigh of relief. Immortal Elderly ordered a caesarean section. Unfortunately, the baby was born too early and there was no way to save it. Immortal Old Chow lost his beloved son again. After a night's driving, War Trucks finally arrives in a brand new desert. Suddenly a tower appeared there with a naked woman on top. Max said, "I know this, it's just a trap." Furiosa is also very familiar with her. She got off the car calmly. Reporting her identity as a child in the oasis, the naked woman immediately sent out a secret code. After getting dressed and coming down, a lot of motorcycles came from all directions. All the aunties and old ladies came down. They are the people of Furiosa Oasis. Meet fellow villagers. With no time to explain, Furiosa asked to be taken to the oasis with him. "I'm thirsty, let's talk while drinking." But these people in the oasis. You say something to Furiosa. "Where is the oasis? Silly whitehead. After you left, the oasis land began to acidify. Gradually, it is no longer suitable for planting. There is no water and no plants. The swamp you passed through is an oasis in the past." Furiosa is desperate. She has been working hard for many years. After traveling a long distance and risking her life, the oasis was finally sealed in her memory forever. After a night of thinking, Furiosa continued to rekindle a glimmer of hope. She left the oil-hungry war truck behind and filled up the motorcycle. Prepare for a journey to the east and drive eastward, hoping to find a suitable place to live. She also invited Max to join her, but Max was used to keeping to himself. Declined to go together. Furiosa left a motorcycle for Max and said goodbye. Just as Max was sending them off, suddenly the little girl flashed in my mind again. Max didn't want to let himself do nothing again, so he drove to catch up with them. Max tells Furiosa the final solution. Going east will definitely be deserted. The so-called oasis. In fact, they have always been in the fortress where they live. There is underground water, green plants, and crops can be grown there. Now the immortals are out in force, as long as they go straight in and fight back. Then use the war truck to seal the road to the canyon. Using a motorcycle to drive in a straight line to occupy the fortress is the hope. Furiosa was persuaded, and everyone decided to get on the war truck again and fight back. Immortal Old Chow used his binoculars to see them heading towards the fortress. I quickly realized that my home was about to be robbed, so I quickly chased after him. An epic decisive battle is staged. Warboy first uses the flying fork to hook the truck to slow it down. Then the super cool swinger comes over. Want to board the car directly and occupy the cab? This has appeared in the first part, and more improvements have been made here. Many circus people were also invited to perform these swinging stunts. Max could only run to the back and cut off the fork chain that was slowing him down. The people from the oasis helped to resist, but the losses were heavy. Oasis fellow villagers sacrificed one after another. And the swingers also captured one of the women. Max finally finished working on the back of the car. Then he ran to the front of the car and killed the attackers. But one of them followed me and fell off the front of the car. Fortunately, Furiosa caught Max. But suddenly there was another person coming from the other side. The palm dagger was inserted directly into Furiosa's waist. That's a heart-wrenching pain. But Furiosa didn't let go, and I was kicked out of the car. Max then jumps into the cannibal's tanker truck. Jumped back into the war truck before the tanker exploded. In order to completely deal with immortal old Chow, I bought and rescued the abducted woman. With Furiosa seriously injured, he climbed into Immortal Joe's chariot. He hooked the mask of Immortal Joe with a hook and pulled it out in an instant. The lower half of Immortal Old Joe's face and mask were taken away. Immortal Old Chow screamed for his life, and his car was also occupied. Watch as everyone starts to move to Immortal Joe's car. Get ready for the war truck to roll over on its own in a canyon. But Immortal Joe's big son hasn't given up yet. He climbed into a war truck and ripped out an engine. At this time, Knuckles, who had not had time to move in the car, witnessed by many sisters, at the narrowest intersection of the canyon, twisted the steering wheel and caused the war truck to roll over. Stopped all the cars behind. This time, Knuckles actually went to the Hall of Valor. They originally wanted to do special effects in post-production for this scene. Because you can only take one shot, it's easy to get a bad shot and end up wasting your money and car. But Young G. Miller insisted on real shooting. Once it happened, it was perfect. Of course, this shot still has post-production special effects. For example, the steering wheel in the transition plays a finishing touch. In this way, Furiosa and the others paid a heavy price. Won the victory, but Furiosa was too injured at this time. Ischemia and hypoxia, life comes to the last moment. Universal Health Pack Max quickly performed the original blood transfusion, and he finally introduces himself. My name is Max. Max can't give up anymore, can't be in his hands again. He lost the person he had just formed a friendship with, and he wanted to save Furiosa. Finally, they arrived at the fortress and threw out the immortal body. The people went crazy and tore up the immortal old pension with their hands. And support Commander Furiosa to become the new ruler of the fortress. In the cheers of everyone, Max disappeared on the high platform. Furiosa finds Max in the crowd. She understands him, the two of them face each other. Max finally chose to go on the road alone. Mad Max 4 Inches uses minimal dialogue and plot. One after another unprecedented car chase and battle drama in the desert was staged for the audience. 30 minutes before the opening, those battles and the visual feast in the sandstorm resumed. It's already making people stare at the table. The action scenes that followed were also relaxed and better each time. George Miller is really a master at staging action scenes. Coupled with the bizarre imagination, it shows us the madness of people in the wasteland world in order to survive. Mad Max 4 is also rated as one of the greatest action movies of all time. I think this is the most exciting Mad Max series I've seen so far. The most impressive movie, definitely a model of action commercial blockbuster. The film also explores issues such as character creation and female awakening. Successfully created Furiosa to be so brave, compassionate, witty and angry female big screen image. Maybe it's because of this. With the latest Mad Max, Fury. This spin-off of the Max series. Okay, the story of the Mad Max series continues. The newly released Mad Max, Goddess of Fury as prequel to Max 4 Inches. Focus on telling Furiosa's growth and transformation. It's equally exciting. Want to see in-depth analysis of new works? Please continue to follow Kong to watch movies. Enjoyed the Long Breath series again. I almost collapse every time I do this kind of video. It's really tiring. If you sympathize with me and like me, please like, retweet and follow me. Then I am Kong. Next video. We'll see you there or not.